The most effective way I have found couples ended up together and have been in really healthy relationships is because they were living their best life.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jenny Woon.
I'm Toni Singh.
And for those of you who are newcomers, welcome to our show. And for those who are returning, welcome back. We are so excited to introduce to you Kimberly Hill. She is a dating coach, dating expert for men. So we wanted to have you on, Kimberly. A lot of us, we are doing so much personal and professional development, but what is part of our life are the men and the partners that we have. And you work specifically with men. So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, thank you for having me on. Well, a little bit about myself. Do you want to know a little about me or a little about my journey?
Both.
About your
Both, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try and give you like the Spark Notes condensed version. So obviously I was born and raised in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. I love being a Canadian. And I think from a very young age, I always loved love. I always loved helping people. It was just like a week ago, I was flipping through this little book that I had created when I was in elementary school, and it was called Now and Then. And the assignment was to visualize your life as like a grown woman at different ages. And I was looking back through this little book that I had like made with crayon, and all my drawings are like awful stick people. But every vision I had for myself was like love and relationships, and we had to make this little crest of like all the things that mattered in our lives. And I put like helping people. I drew like this ugly little hand, and it was like, I just want to help people. I had this little vision as a young girl of like just being someone that lifted others up. So it's always been in my DNA to want to support people and just be a kind person. I definitely would call myself an HSP, which is a highly sensitive person. I couldn't ever watch violent shows when I was little because I felt the emotions and the pain that the person on the show was experiencing. It was like too overwhelming for me. And so anyways, this is me, little girl, love. And kind of we grow up as we do into kind of young adults. And the whole focus for me was I got to get into business because, you know, business is what makes you money. And I also like love, but also had this vision that I wanted to like have an apartment and like use like Louboutin heels to walk on white carpet. So it's like this kind of split vision. I love, but I also want to be a boss, BITCH, right? And so I, went to business school, and then, took that little, kind of gap year that a lot of people take. And I ended up traveling on a one-way ticket to Bangkok, Thailand with one of my good friends. We intended to go away for like 2 or 3 months. And I didn't come back home for 10 years. So I ended up loving traveling. I ended up, all of Southeast Asia into Australia, and ended up in an 8-year career in financial derivatives. I'm kind of like really far away from this little vision of a young girl. Like I'm definitely working on the white carpet, high heel part of it, but my whole life, the love part was a pretty big burning disaster. I didn't really have the skills to be in a relationship, and I never really like dated traditionally. And so while that part wasn't necessarily working out for me, like the other vision for myself was. And so here I am now working in Sydney, Australia. I'm in a field that's very male dominated. Like I sat on a broking floor in the Sydney office, and there, let's just say for round numbers, there's 100 men in the office and 2 women. So like bring on the guys, because that's how I spent all of my corporate career, was working with men, traveling with men, learning from men. I would do, in my role that I had at that company, I would be going on to investment banking floors. So that's just another room full of men, a few women sprinkled around there. And that was my life. Like, I was doing really well for myself, but I was in a really masculine energy field. And I was also witnessing the struggle that these men were going through. Again, this little empathetic girl is now in this like male office, but also picking up on the subtleties of guys that were definitely struggling.
What were the struggles that you noticed?
So wonderful question. So that industry is like, has you guys watched Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah, love it.
Okay, so obviously not that crazy. No one was throwing any midgets around on the broking floor, but they were throwing rugby balls around, right? And it's like boys club. But most of these guys were either married or totally struggling to find relationships. And after time, these guys became my family. So I noticed, like, when they were going out to entertain clients, their wives would be at home, and all sorts of bad choices were made, and, struggles were kind of witnessed in terms of like the stress that these guys had to perform at a really high level in their jobs, but also like try and tend to their relationships, and their relationships weren't always working out.
And also maybe being a guy's guy, like the stereotypical
definitely,
a little bit.
Totally, especially like Aussie culture is like boys, like boys go to school together, girls go to school together. And so here I am in this industry, and I'm that empathetic girl who's kind of seeing the struggles of others and going through my own relationship struggles. I had many relationships that didn't work out, and I always thought it was the other person. It's really easy to understand and see what someone else is doing wrong, and a lot harder to see what we're not doing right in those situations. And so I had a series of relationships that weren't working out. And then I was seeing these guys having relationships that weren't working out. And it was like, what relationships are the biggest stressor for people? So it kind of clicked for me. And I started at that point, our company provided us free access to work with a coach. So this is my first experience working with a coach. I'd heard of coaches before, but back then it was like you had like a personal coach for like a celebrity. That's all we really knew of coaches, or at least all I knew of coaches. And so I started speaking to this gentleman, and I realized what I needed the most support with, and what others were needing the most support with, were the relationships. So it was like how they interacted with others. Yeah.
So for our listeners, what is the difference between a relationship counselor versus a relationship coach?
Yeah, so look, some counselors will take a very coach-like approach, but if I can simplify it or like dumb it down to give the clearest example, counselors or therapists they're trained very differently, and often they're trained to help an individual understand the series of events that occurred in their childhood or past that has kind of created the personality and person they are today.
Makes sense.
Right? And so that can be a really painful process and a very long process. We're probably not too unfamiliar with someone saying they've talked to a therapist for 10 years, right? Right? We hear that a lot. And I think therapy is really important because understanding our identity and also unpacking traumas that have happened to us is really important for self-growth, right? We can't ignore who we are or how we became to be and still kind of grow as a person. We're shutting off a huge part of our lives. So counseling will go down that road. Coaching is very much, again, to kind of simplify it, I'm going to meet you, Jenny and Toni, where you are today, and I'm going to ask you where you want to go. I want to ask you what your goals are, and I'm going to help you to take the necessary steps, to learn the necessary information, and to support and guide you so you can move forward and achieve those goals.
So it sounds
So-
like the coaching's more present and future based versus
Totally, yeah. It's
And-
very solution focused and solution orientated. Now, that doesn't mean that a coach isn't going to ask about your childhood. This doesn't mean a coach isn't going to say, you know, what triggers you or what happened in your past relationship that upset you. Of course, we ask questions about the past, but we don't stay there. We don't. I probably can't speak on behalf of all coaches. I don't, and there's trauma coaches that probably do all just that. I don't spend my entire session with men talking about the past, because my teacher, when I went to Erickson International to become qualified as a coach, Marilyn Atkinson, she was like in her 90s still teaching because she's so passionate about all this. She talked about like the why questions and the past as imagining you're in a square room and you're using like a roller brush to paint the floor, and every question you ask about the past, you kind of roll the paint on the floor, and then eventually you kind of get stuck into a corner. You've painted yourself into like this little corner and you can't now step over the wet paint. So she used that analogy to help us understand how if all we do is dissect the past, we stay stuck.
And so do you coach couples or is it individual coaching only?
It's individual coaching only. I've explored the idea of like whether I wanted to work with couples. However, I feel like there's a kind of a moral reason why I wouldn't start. Like, for example, let's say I'm working. So most of my clients are actually single men, but I do work with men in relationships, right? So when I work with a guy that's in a relationship, if I work with him personally for, let's say, like 6 sessions, and then he wants to bring his partner in, if I was that partner, I would feel at such a disadvantage already, because the coach and my husband or my partner already have this like working relationship. And now I'm coming in and feeling like I'm having to fight for my perspective or point of view. So if I wanted to ever do couples coaching, that's all I would do, because I'd want to create what feels like an equal playing field for both individuals to feel heard equally, not for one to have had 6 sessions to, can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so 6 sessions to like bitch about their partner, and then all of a sudden their partner comes in. I don't feel like that's a healthy or correct approach. Maybe people would disagree with me. So I don't do it for that reason.
I just thought of something cool.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this would work, but for a business opportunity, maybe for you. Because it makes sense if you're working with men specifically and they have a partner. If the partner was into coaching, I wonder if you could have like not a referral partner, but do you know what I mean? It'd kind of be interesting to see if each of the partners had their own coach who was
for
looking
sure.
at, right, and then they could both be working towards something cool together, but with separate coaches.
That
Anyhow, I
is
digress.
awesome. Yeah, and you know what? I would love if like the guys probably wouldn't be reaching out to me in the first place if their wife was super willing to talk to a
Sure.
coach or go to a counselor with them. Usually I find that these guys are going, I've been trying to get through to my partner for quite some time now, and I need a safe place to work through my shit right now. And I do say to these guys, look, I can help you with your emotional regulation. I can help teach you skills that are going to give your relationship a chance of success, but I in no way can control your partner, how she feels, or what she's willing to do. So I said, look, I'm here to support your mental health, to teach you what maybe you wish you had known 5 years ago, to support you in reaching some of your personal goals. I said, but at some point it may lead to you wanting to do couples counseling with your partner, right? And that approach would be very different than how I operate anyways.
Yeah, and I would think that men would be hiring you because of your positive, energetic spirit versus
I
hiring
hope so.
like a male coach. What do you
Yeah.
find when you're helping like single men? What do you find the most common issue they're seeking help on?
They're struggling with dating. That's like
That's
the
very
main.
so general.
Yeah, so there's about 15 major problems that stem underneath that they're coming to a dating coach because in some way for them, they're struggling with dating. That could be, I don't know where to start, right? It could be, I'm dating online and I'm getting no matches and I'm getting ghosted. It could be, I have crippling self-doubt. so I don't know how to put myself out there. It could be I'm actually really wanting to date, but I have no idea how to attract the kind of relationship that's important to me, but I'm really afraid that I'm going to end up in like the one I had before, right? So there's like the main issue really is that they're struggling with an aspect of dating and attracting the type of women they want to attract. That's the issue. And then for each of them, there's a unique reason why that's the case for them, right?
Makes sense.
Would that, does that
yeah.
look like ranging from confidence level to not taking the right selfie picture to post on a dating app? Like,
That happens.
Totally.
I mean, I'm not, it's,
Yeah.
it's funny, but it's probably true, right?
No, I know.
For sure. Like, especially my younger clients, they're really preoccupied. I just did a podcast yesterday on like the mistakes guys make when they start dating again after divorce. And one of the mistakes I was talking about is like guys get really caught up in like the I call it the tactics of dating. So they're really worried about the first thing to say to a woman, or the one picture that's on their profile, or like the little tiny micro parts of dating. They're not really thinking about like their overall strategy, who they are, what they're bringing to the process, what environments they're going to be most comfortable dating in. Like, they don't ask those big questions. They just, because everyone is saying like, you're sending the wrong text, or you waited too long to write back. So they're so stressed and preoccupied with the little tactics that they're kind of missing the whole picture, which is, what are you even looking for? And like, where are your strengths highlighted in this process? Because they all go, oh, I have to online date, but I hate online dating and it doesn't work for men like me.
Interesting. So,
Right.
for our listeners who are men, because there are a fair amount of men that listen to our podcast, and some of them have reached out and said that they've struggled with committed relationships. So for the men that you coach who are in committed relationships, what is the most common issue that they're seeking help on?
They feel underappreciated. They are struggling to get the connection they're wanting from their partner. Misconception is that they're unhappy because they're not getting enough sex. That's what like women sometimes think too. Oh, he just wants sex all the time. He's like so needy, and I'm busy and I have kids to raise and a job and all this kind of stuff. Like, just back off, right? But all of the men that I've worked with, they're like, yeah, of course I want to have sex with my wife. But what I want more, I just want to connect with her. I want her to just kind of stop nagging me or criticizing me. I want her to love me for who I am. And I just really want to like have some physical affection. I want to like cuddle with her, or hold her hand, or have like a long, meaningful hug, or like remember what it feels like when I dated her. Because now she's my long-term girlfriend, or she's my wife. And that excitement, that connection I felt like isn't there. So they're often coming to me because they're like, Kimberly, I love my partner, my wife, so much, but I don't know how to connect to her. And I need help to approach and connect.
I was going to ask this later, but this is a question that I wanted to ask. I'll ask it now.
Yeah, ask
What's
it
a
now.
really good, like, safe way to check in with your partner to increase that emotional connection then?
Well, firstly, timing. Okay, so before you just kind of like walk up to your partner and be like, how do I connect better with you, right? It's pick the right time, because for a conversation to be like effective and for someone to really actively listen to what you are saying, you can't just do it when you're dropping the kids off, or when you're emptying the dishwasher, or like when your mind is preoccupied. So if you want to have a meaningful conversation with your partner, first, either ask to have it and then pick a time that you can mutually agree so you can really hear each other, or, choose your timing wisely, is step one before you even say anything. Because, how many times do we hear something, but it comes in one ear and out the other, or we hear it and then like a second later we forget it, right? So timing is really important. And then usually I say, instead of just kind of like listing all the things that you need or aren't going right for you, ask your partner. So once you've created that dedicated time, to say like, how are things going in our relationship? And ask them to give you feedback too, and be like, look, this is I just want to know, honestly, how you're feeling, what's going on for you. And you might hear their partner say, God, I'm so stressed out right now. Or I'm just like, work is absolutely like going bonkers. Or I'm just not feeling good in my body or whatever. You might get a reason why that person is not connecting to you as much, because we all have our issues. We all have stuff that's going on that keeps us from like being really open and vulnerable with someone. So I say invite your partner to give you some feedback first.
Okay.
Right? And then you can say things like, because I advocate, by the way, any relationship should have somewhat of a semi-frequent relationship check-in. Okay, so that could be for couples once a month. It could be once a quarter. It doesn't matter. But it's just like, how are things going in the last 3 months? We're a team. We can talk about how our team is performing.
Yeah.
All sport teams, they don't just ignore, hey, how do you think the defense is feeling? They talk about it. What went well in that game? What could we do better? Like, we're a team. We want to take on the world, right? We have that camaraderie. Whereas in our relationships, it's like, I wonder how my partner's feeling. Dare I ask him, right? Or dare I ask her? It's like, no, just have these regular check-ins, because if you can get more comfortable giving each other positive feedback and opening the dialogue to ask for what you need more of or less of, you're going to have so much more chance of success and such a higher level of satisfaction in your relationship. So back to the question could be, how am I showing up for you? Is there anything you need more of or less of from me? And then vice versa the other way. And this is a great opportunity to say, you know, I always say, if we're going to share how we feel, we use I statements, right? You might have even heard this before. Instead of, you're not connecting with me and I feel annoyed, it's, I feel a little disconnected from you at the moment. And then you put your positive request in. Be really meaningful for me if we could plan a date night without the kids, without our phones. Or it'd be really meaningful if we could just go for a nice walk this fall in the leaves, bundled up, holding hands. Like, just put your feeling and your request in. That's just letting your partner know what's going on for you, what you're needing more of, without blaming them, right? Because as soon as we say you aren't, or you did, or you should, then they immediately are going on the defensive. Well, here's all the reasons why I can't do that right now. I'm so stressed and blah, blah, blah. And they'll rant about what's true for them, versus saying, I hear you. You know what? I can do that. Or, you know what? I can't go for a walk today, but I know it's important to you, so I'm going to schedule time so we can do that tomorrow.
These are such great advice, Kimberly. And for someone who's a real estate professional, or someone who's an entrepreneur where they're high quality, high value women, how do they attract high value, high quality men? What are the signs that they should be looking for?
How does a quality woman attract a quality man?
Yeah.
By being the type of person, relationship that you want to have. Like, energy is so important, right? Of course, you can go seek these guys out, and that's what we're doing all the time. But the most effective way I have found couples ended up together and have been in really healthy relationships is because they were living their best life.
Yeah.
They were just
On their
being,
own, basically.
Exactly. Like, yeah, of course, you know, we don't shut ourselves off from the world and our opportunities, but if you're learning, if you're getting out in the world, if you're socializing, you're networking, if you're learning your own self-development, if you're, you know, taking courses, if you're traveling, you will meet that person, because that quality person is doing the same things that you are doing. And that's what's going to make you compatible for each other. It's like, the last thing I would say is, oh, if you're a high quality woman working in real estate, you should go to the nicest bar in town to meet a quality guy. Sure, maybe that will work, but is that what you want? The guy that sits at the bar and drinks? Like, or is it the kind of man that would actually be taking a course or at a networking event, or actually just out having fun, playing golf with his buddies or whatever? Like, what is it that you think is a high quality man? Think about what he is doing and how he's living his life, and invite some of that into your life too.
That's very interesting.
Awesome. Yeah.
Those are good tips. I have another question. Okay, so I'll give a personal experience first. This is why I'm asking the question. and I think
Yeah.
Jenny can relate to this, is that
We're
are
asking
both-
for friends.
we're
No,
asking for
we're
friends.
asking
but
for friends. No,
also,
but really
I
it's
can
about us.
say that. So I'm happily married.
Yeah.
And
Yay.
it's interesting. Yeah. The check-ins and things, the regular check-ins that you had said, my husband and I literally do that. And I can't tell
Good.
you, like, when you create
Awesome.
that dialogue, oh my gosh, there's so much more space to create new things. And you don't,
Totally.
the first time you kind of ask that question to your partner, it's a bit weird because it's like a muscle that you haven't flexed.
Totally. It is
Yeah.
weird. But like
Yeah.
you can laugh about the weirdness.
Yeah,
then
but
that's
now
even
it's
better.
amazing. It's amazing. So my question is for our single, high-performing, high-achieving women out there. I experienced a lot of judgment from other people, maybe in the workplace, because I do carry a high level of masculine energy. I think a lot of type A women do. And so
Totally.
my question is, for women that carry a high level of masculine energy in their workplace, how can they dial it down a bit when spending time with their partner? Because is
Yeah.
there that level of, like, if you're masculine energy all the time, like doer, high achiever, sometimes what I've observed in some of our high performing friends is that their partners at some point might become resentful or feel that they're not masculine enough.
Totally. Well, number one, for all you high achieving type A women who are killing it at work and in the boardroom, create a level of self awareness first. Okay? Because if you're not aware that how you're impacting others is maybe like, so let's say you're really in control. You're the manager. You're the one setting the meetings. You're the one setting the KPIs, the direction. You're the one, like, going for the goals and being driven and kind of, putting that energy of I'm organizing, I'm planning, all of this masculine type A energy. Are you aware enough to know that you're also doing that at home? Right? First and foremost. So if you leave work and you're in your suit and you come home and you're also still playing that role of this is what's happening, this is what we're doing, move out of the way, I can do it better than you.
Subconsciously,
You're not achieving
most of the time.
I used to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then we had to work through that. So this is very interesting.
Totally.
information.
So it's like we're fascinating human beings. How we show up at work doesn't necessarily mean how we need to show up with our partners. How we show up with our partners probably isn't how we want to show up at work, right? How we interact with our mom and dad is different than how we interact with our 4-year-old niece. Humans are fascinating. We have a wide range of emotions, a wide range of characteristics and personalities. I'm not saying you need to be totally different in one environment than in the other, but know that an environment that you're in can require a bit of change too. So again, if you're kind of like, my mom is a good example of this. She loved like wearing her beautiful suits. She was in sales. She was like kicking butt in her 25, 30 career where she worked in the freight forwarding industry. And she was like type A, like this shit is getting done. Like this is Monica from Malta. She is like gonna do it, right? So, but Monica from Malta, who was kicking butt, kind of brought that home. So then she was in control of like how the entire house looked. She's in control of the entire menu. She's in control of all the stuff that goes in the fridge. She's in control of fluffing the pillows every 10 seconds. She's in control of how things look on the shelf and everything. And almost like, and I feel this too, because thanks mom for passing all this on to me. It's like a sense of neuroticism that comes sometimes with that busy mind and type A person. It's like, take some breaths and know that now you're at home and you can slow down. And if you trust your partner, then you can take a breath and relax. What happens is for these type A women who are in control at work, let's be real here. There's an element where they don't trust their partner to take care of the things that need to be done. And because they don't trust their partner, they will do those things before they feel like they can relax. So if they're in a relationship with a guy that kind of sucks at life skills, okay, doesn't know how to like tidy up or like run necessarily a household or do some of those things, a woman will come in and be a busy mind and do all of that stuff with her kind of neurotic energy to get it all done before she can even relax. And at that point that she's relaxing, it's probably 9 o'clock and she's pissed off that she didn't get the help that she wanted but never asked for. So you're totally depolarizing your relationship. Like a guy is like totally like a neurotic. He's simpler minded in the sense he's like, wife is stressed, girlfriend's stressed. She's coming in. She's a tornado. She's tidying. She's making everything. She hasn't stopped. She hasn't hugged me. She hasn't even sat down to like throw her shoes out and be like, wow, just so glad to see you, babe. Like she's a busybody, and he's kind of going like, hey babe, can I help it? No, I got it. Nope, I'm fine. And he's like, what? Where the hell do I fit in here? And so he's kind of going, I'm not really attracted to this energy. And the girlfriend's going like, you're not helpful. And then they depolarize their attraction because both partners aren't understanding how to work with each other.
So
right?
To summarize, you said create self-awareness, slow down.
Yeah.
And I also heard acknowledgement of your partner upon arrival of entering the home.
Well,
communication.
Yeah, actually, okay, ladies, this is the funniest analogy, and guys that are listening, they're probably going to laugh, maybe be offended for a second, and then agree. Men are like dogs.
Oh.
Okay.
I'm ready to hear this.
When you get home, when you have a dog there, what do? Your dog is excited to see you, and you're like, oh, hi, baby, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you give him like a little pet, you roll him over, he scratches his belly, oh, I love you, muffin, la, 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 right? That's what guys want too.
That's so
They
true.
Why
want-
didn't someone explain this to me earlier?
This is why we're asking step by step, okay?
Yeah,
Because
like,
Right?
okay, now what do I do next after I pet the dog? Okay.
For the men listening, they'll probably be like, this is true. Maybe they'll get offended again. But the amount of external validation that men need is way higher than you think.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm going to say that
useful.
again. The amount of external validation that men need is surprisingly higher than you think.
I'm getting goosebumps because it totally speaks to how I am in my own home too. Like I'll start cleaning, I'll vacuum, I'm doing things,
We do the
and
same thing.
And my boyfriend's
It's
like
the
laying
neurotic,
back on
but-
on the couch, and he expressed many times he's very uncomfortable around me, and I'm like,
my husband also says, why are you doing that? Why don't you just relax? You just got home. He's not comfortable either.
so.
Yeah.
I don't even.
Okay,
know
wait.
where
So just to finish the dog analogy,
Okay,
there's
yes.
two other things, right? So men want you to be excited when you see each other, okay, like a dog does at the door. They want to be given physical affection. They want to be pat behind the ears, scratched on the belly, given hugs and kisses. Men are not just wanting to have sex with you. They want to touch you, to feel you, to connect with you, like to be in your beautiful feminine energy. They want that. They crave that. So they need pets and cuddles like dogs do. And just throw this one in for good humor. Make sure you feed them, right?
Oh my gosh, that's where I failed. I can't do step 3.
That's
but
what I was
all I'm
gonna say.
imagining right now is you going home and hi Dave, hi.
But, it's a funny analogy to say, like, in all seriousness, if you're coming home and you're, like, ignoring your partner's, what the Gottman Institute calls emotional bids, okay? So emotional bids are an individual's attempt to connect with their partner. And that might take the form of a text, a comment, a question, a statement. Here's a scenario of an emotional bid. Wife is in the kitchen. I got a actually funny knock. Why don't women wear watches?
I don't know.
Because the time is on the stove.
I actually do look at
Joke.
the stove all the time.
Oh, totally inappropriate joke. So, because my analogy, the woman is in the kitchen.
Yeah.
The guy's sitting on the...
You're canceled,
Yeah.
Kimberly.
Canceled, yeah. Well, I'm the first one that has like a long list of inappropriate jokes, usually all taught to me by my mother.
We accept
'cause-
these jokes on our
Probably
podcast.
taught by your clients, and that's why maybe some of their relationships aren't working out.
No, usually I joke with my clients about those jokes, and they're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you'd say that." And I'm like, "It's a safe space." Okay, so woman is in the kitchen, tidying, whatever. Guy is sitting on the couch, feet up. Maybe he's watching a sport game, but he's like kind of aware that she's whatever, doing other things, and he can hear her, and he's aware of it. He's not shut off as you think he might be. And so he'll say, "Hey babe, do you need a hand?" And the woman in the kitchen doesn't say anything. She keeps scurrying around, doing whatever she's doing. She essentially ignores what is called his bid to connect. Okay, so these little moments are happening all the time in our relationships. So he says, "Hey babe, can I give you a hand?" And she doesn't answer him. And so that's a failed attempt to connect. So he's kind of going, that actually hurts his heart a little bit.
Okay.
Right? And if you ignore your partner multiple times in a day, you are failing at multiple attempts to connect with them. And over time, that person who can't seem to connect with their partner despite their attempts, their humor, their statements, their questions, will start to build up the resentment. So it's so important that we acknowledge, it sounds so simple, we need to acknowledge our partner.
I have to check in with our male producer for a sec. Braden, is this stuff true? The dog analogy, maybe? Yeah? Yeah. Wow, okay.
Does Braden like to be touched and cuddled?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big bear.
Would Braden appreciate it if someone sat him down and said, "I made this amazing lasagna and here's a glass of wine"?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And would he also appreciate if his wife or girlfriend, when he came home, was like, "Babe, I'm so excited to see you"?
Give or take.
or take.
Right?
I think
Yeah,
it
I'm going to
depends.
say
Yeah,
probably.
He said give or take. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay, maybe there's
Okay.
something going on there. Is he excited to see his partner?
I
Yes,
imagine,
he's
yes.
nodding. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Well, that's good too. Yeah. Well, imagine if like you came home and she was just like completely got headphones in, totally ignored you for the
Yeah.
first 30 minutes. You'd kind of be like, "Hello, I'm home."
Maybe
Right.
just speaking about the evolution of a relationship, perhaps. What is the difference between chemistry, compatibility, and connection?
Yeah, so good question. So a lot of people would just say, "Oh, those are all the same thing," right? From my perspective, chemistry is more, and this is kind of a chemistry type answer, is more when you're with someone, you're on a date with someone, you're in a relationship, and you're feeling those love hormones. So we got oxytocin and dopamine and serotonin all going crazy, and we're like feeling that excitement, that high, that chemistry with that person. Ooh, it's like what women and men are looking for on that first date. The chemistry wasn't right for me. They'll say, "Oh, I didn't feel the connection," but what they're really saying is, "I didn't feel that spark. So sorry, you don't make it to round 2," right? So for me, how I think of chemistry is like, can you have that excitement between two people? And that can happen in multiple different ways, right? So chemistry, connection is the next one. Connection is how well two individuals in a relationship feel that they can relate and understand and trust each other. I feel, and I talk about intimacy in 4 layers. So connection to me would be, how well am I emotionally connected to my partner? How well am I physically connected to my partner? How well am I intellectually connected to my partner? And how well am I I always say this word wrong. In the experiences, how well am I experimentally connecting with my partner, i.e. doing fun things together? When we're out for playing golf together, we're connecting. We have an awesome connection. We're shooting the shit, we're having fun, we're playing with each other. We're connected in our experiences. So for me, connection is how well am I relating to my partner across these 4 layers of intimacy? Do I feel connected to this individual? Do they know me and do I know them? So that to me is connection. And then compatibility is part of connection too, but also like, do we work with one another? Like where we are headed in our relationship, are we going in the same direction? Are we actually compatible for the kind of relationship that I want and you want? Do we share a similar set of values? I'm a woman, let's say I want to have kids, you're a guy, you don't want to have kids. Not compatible, not in that area. It's something you really can't compromise on. If I am really working really hard to save money because I want to purchase a home, because I want to have a home, and I want to have kids running around, but the other person's like, right now, I'm like, that's the last thing that's on my mind. I got this big opportunity at work. It's going to take me traveling every month. Probably not compatible, right? Because you're wanting different things. So chemistry, that spark, connection, how well we're relating to each other, compatibility. Do we want the same things from a relationship? Because I might have the spark and connection with someone, but it might not last because we're doing this, right? For those of you that maybe don't see the visual, you're going down different trails. I'm taking road A, you're taking road B, and we're getting further and further apart from each other, right?
And to reference that, do opposites attract? Is that like a myth or is it actually sustainable?
Well, I think, of course, opposites attract. Men and women are opposites, right? Like masculine and feminine energy are opposites. And sometimes we find that someone who likes something different than us is interesting and intriguing. So I don't want to date me. God forbid. I want someone different than me. And you've heard these kind of phrases like, two halves make a whole. Bullshit. Love is all you need. Bullshit. I need someone that complements all my weaknesses. Sure, but are you going to do anything about your weaknesses? Bullshit, right? Like, yeah, sure, we want someone that's different than us. But also think about opposites attract in this way. Let's say, so I have a sense of humor, I like to think. I love humor. It's part of my life. I joke all the time, sometimes highly inappropriately. Opposite of me would be someone that doesn't find my jokes funny. We're not going to last. We just won't last. In fact, I've had that experience before where I remember this was like a huge, awful thing that stuck with me and I had to work through it was, I don't like the core of who you are. Someone said that to me.
Oh.
Someone who I was
Ouch.
dating for a while.
That's rude.
Yeah. I don't like the core of who you are. And I was like, and we were totally opposite. And that's why. It was like really hurtful, but I realized we're too different and we're not going to work out. Because that core of who I am, that humorous side of me, that lighthearted person that can also be really serious too, if you don't like that I can't change that. I can change how I communicate. I can change how I organize. I can change, certain parts about myself, but the core of who I am, I can't change. So if the person is too opposite of you, that's not a good thing either. Right?
Do you think that it's harder to date now and also stay in a marriage now than it was 15 years ago? If so, why?
Well, I can't speak on behalf of how hard it might have felt 15 years ago, but definitely today, we have way more distraction. If we think of how it's not, I don't think it's ever easy. Like biologically, we as human beings are not naturally monogamous. We're not. Like if you actually look at the history of like tribes, women would sleep with multiple men, men would sleep with multiple women. That's kind of how it went. We, through I think a series of like religion and other factors, have moved more towards this marriage, this union, this two people monogamous to each other. So it's not actually like in our biological nature, for one. So was it easier in the past than it is now, or vice versa? I don't think necessarily. I just think now we have way more distraction. Porn, you can jump on a dating app and find someone within 20 minutes and be hooking up with them. Whereas it was definitely not easy to do that 20, 30 years ago, right? Doesn't mean people didn't think about it or create affairs or have those types of things happen, but it's way easier to be distracted. And I always talk about how like so many of us have the grass is greener mindset in our relationship. As soon as they get into a tough spot in their relationship or a tough spot even dating, it's like, oh, I can just find someone else that doesn't have these problems. So they're already got the mindset that hard work is not part of a relationship and they check out. And hard work is part of any relationship.
So what, in your opinion, would be the signs of an emotionally available man?
What, a guy who's emotionally available?
Yeah.
Signs? So if you're dating him for the first time, he's not oversharing his past relationships for one, right? So he wouldn't be doing that. He'd be actually like really engaged and learning about you. I mean, a huge mistake that emotionally unavailable people are making is they're dating before they're ready. So they're still bringing forward all their past experiences. So emotionally available man is going to be a lot more present, right? He will be open to discussing his life, right? So someone who's not emotionally available they don't want to necessarily talk about where they're headed. They're a little more closed off. So someone who is available is like, oh yeah, these are the things I'm doing. And their energy is much more like clean and open. And hey, this is my focus. And I'm okay talking about who I am because I'm ready and I'm mentally okay to either be accepted for who I am or not. Right. So they're a lot more open in their dialogue. Yeah, for sure. Those are definitely things early on you'd be looking for.
If they're trauma dumping maybe the first couple of dates into meeting up with them, is that a red flag?
I think so. Yes. Sometimes people would say it's a yellow flag, proceed with caution. Sometimes people do get nervous and overshare, and that happens. But I've worked with a lot of people too that are going way too deep too early on. Okay. And it's usually because they're like, it's a huge sign of insecurity. I got to put all these things out on the table and I hope they accept me.
Okay.
And it's like, they're talking about their past trauma or physical trauma or sexual trauma. And it's like, they're kind of dumping this all on a person and saying like, if I tell them really who I am, I hope that they accept me. And if the other person joins in and dumping their trauma, then you're trauma bonding and you're essentially forming a connection with someone over trauma and negative past events. And I've seen people in those relationships and they're really unhealthy because you're not bringing out the best in each other. You're reminding each other of the worst. So you kind of become your worst version of yourself. So yeah, on a first date, like, firstly, they're not meant to be 8 hours long or 4 hours long necessarily, right? First date is, and people don't even understand what dating is. I've asked people, what is dating? I had one of my clients say, well, once I like go on a date with another person, now we're just like working towards that relationship. And I'm like, what? Oh. Like, we're like kind of like committed. We like committed to like date and I'm like, no, you're not committed. They don't owe you anything. Like this is an experiment. You're getting to know someone and they're getting to know you to assess the possibility of forming a committed relationship. It's an assessment. So when you go out for a first date with somebody, you don't want to bring your interview style in, but essentially you're assessing them. Hey, do we get along? Did we laugh about something? Do we have anything in common? Did we actually enjoy each other's company? Because if we did and we talked about fun things or where you're traveling or what we like or we bonded over something that's positive and lighthearted, let's go out a second and maybe a third time, right? It's an assessment. It's just gauging, like, was there enough there? Did I see that the individual was attractive to me? Not just physically, but like in terms of who they are. And then you go on a second date and a third date and a fourth date, right? So
I kind of find my pattern in the first scenario where I'm dating them like one or two dates and then immediately it's just automatically or known that we transition into girlfriend without that assessment valuation.
Within a few dates for you? Like within what, 2-3 dates?
Yeah.
Are you like my first example?
Yes, I am literally, you're talking about me.
Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting.
So you love then.
I
So
love
my
love,
guess is like you might be a little more of like the fall head over heels quite quickly. You might be a little more anxious in the beginning, right? Because often what's happening, so you're in the like that chemistry phase. I feel the spark and that makes me feel in love with you. Mm-hmm. It's a feeling. You don't like love. I mean, it's the hardest emotion to describe, but like love isn't your activated attachment system. Love isn't excitement. That's excitement, right? That's sometimes lust. And often we're confusing that feeling for compatibility.
Interesting.
And we're valuing the idea of being loved by somebody, which is exciting and makes us feel good. We're valuing that higher than trust, respect, compatibility,
Right.
aligned values. I mean, I do it. I've done it too. Like, I'm no stranger to this. It's like, oh my God, this person is perfect. What? You don't know that they're perfect. You haven't had any time to see what they're like in their worst, when they're stressed. You have no idea if they get along with your family. You probably don't even know if you both want kids, or you both want marriage, or you have same religion, right? So we get excited in that chemistry. We get carried away and swept away by oxytocin is called the love hormone for a reason. We feel addicted to the person. We want to see them and talk to them all the time. We're kind of crazy. We're addicted to that person. And that phase, by the way, can last like up to 18 months for some people.
Oh, wow.
And then it does wear
And then,
off.
right. And then you actually start realizing there's some misalignment there.
Oh, now I'm noticing that annoying quirk.
Yeah.
Oh, now I'm noticing that actually he bothers me that way, or she bothers me that way. And that is where a lot of people break it off and move on, because then they go chasing that feeling again, right? At that point, when it wears off, it's like, do we get along? Do we want the same things? Like, how do we now work to get those feelings to come up more often? Because it's very possible to rekindle and recreate chemistry, and it usually, in simplest form, is do what you did in the beginning. What happens is when people get more committed to each other, routine and like kind of mundane life kicks in, and we stop going on dates, we stop putting on our nice lingerie, we stop doing all the things that we did early on to win that person over. And of course you're not going to feel that spark anymore, because you're not trying and putting the effort in the same way you did when you first met, right? The guy who maybe isn't great at organizing stuff, but early on he found a way to do it to impress you, right? And then he never books a dinner after that. And it's because like, oh, I already got the person, we're already committed. And so many people see things like marriage as like the end goal. Like, marriage is the beginning of your relationship. So yeah, so if you fall hard and fall fast, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. It's totally normal. A lot of us are feeling that way, but you may just wish to put some checks and balances in place for yourself, so that before you decide, you can feel all those lovey feelings, but don't necessarily say, you're my boyfriend yet, or I commit to you yet. Give it a little more time. You can still be head over heels and doing all the fun things you want to do, give you full permission to do that. Just don't commit yet. Just give it a little more time before you say, we're a thing, we're a unit.
Okay.
And that's because you want to at least give each other a little bit of time to learn about each other, like truly beyond the addiction you're feeling, essentially.
And what if there's a high level of like anxious attachment that plays a role in that?
Exactly. So if you are an anxiously attached individual, then then that's more likely to happen for you. You're going to need more reassurance. You're going to want more connection. You're going to want to be around that person more. And so you do, again, need to understand that about yourself. That's the self-awareness piece. Okay, do I need to talk to my partner right now? Or is this my anxiety talking? Right? And you can either work through it yourself if you learn some of the tools, or you can also, sometimes even have like a friend to keep you on track, even in the early days, or a counselor that you speak to and say like, because I was like that when I met Andrew. I never thought I was an anxious person until I met Andrew, because he's slightly more avoidant, right? Like, we had an amazing connection, and he would tell me, oh my God, I'm so excited. Like, you are like the girl of my dreams that I've been waiting for. I'm like, oh my God. And then I wouldn't hear from him for 2 days. Oh no. I was like, what
did I say wrong? What did I
Yeah,
do?
and the anxiety in me was like crazier than I've ever felt. But because I do what I do, I had some tools. I would do some deep breathing. I would do some journaling, right? I just forgot the term called stream of consciousness journaling, right? I would actually drive down to Crescent Beach in the morning in my car, and I'd sit there when the sun was coming up, and I would write. And I'd let that anxiety out of my brain and onto a piece of paper, and I'd never look at it again. Just be a bunch of gibberish. So I worked through the anxiety, and I'd ask myself, do I need to message Andrew right this second? Or is this my anxiety talking? And 70% of the time it was like, that's my anxiety talking. Okay, what can I do for myself right now? Can I have a bath? Can I go for a walk? Can I read a book? Can I call a friend? Can I make some other plans? What do I need to do to help myself so that I'm not allowing my anxiety to drive all of my decisions? So many of us allow our emotions to control us. We're very reactive versus acknowledging how we feel, challenging that thought, understanding what triggered that thought, but then making a different choice, which is more of the cognitive behavioral therapy process. Okay, I'm feeling anxious. I really want to talk to Andrew, and I really want him to be right here, right now. But he's working right now. Okay, so this is my anxiety talking. He's working. He has a job. I'm going to talk myself through this. He's not ignoring me on purpose, because that's what the anxious mind will say. He's ignoring me on purpose. No, I'll go, okay, allow my anxious thought to come up. Now let's challenge it with a more appropriate thought substitution. He's probably busy and working. More realistic thought. Okay, he's probably busy and working. It's not all because he doesn't like me or he's changed his mind. So you talk yourself through that anxiety. If you don't necessarily know how to do that, then you may need to talk it through with a friend, a coach, a counselor, or someone, right, to help you process that. I was able to work through it on my own. I still felt that anxiety, that insane rush of anxiousness, but I had some tools to deal with it. So it stopped me from essentially scaring Andrew off and making him be like, she's crazy, because I was managing how I was feeling, and it stopped me from being like, hey, how come you're not texting me back? Which is what the anxious person wants to say, right?
I've just thought of a friend right now in this conversation, and I'd like to ask a question about that, because at what point, so I'm actually the opposite. When Dave and I first started dating and he wouldn't contact me, I'm like, this is fabulous, because I can do, this is great. I could do all of these things. You know what I mean? So, but at what point for this type of anxious attachment, is it necessary to have a conversation with your partner or potential partner? Because I appreciate the fact that you would have that outlet, like for example, that writing on the paper, right? To have a more realistic, just to calm yourself down. But at what point would someone need to communicate that? Because it would be a tendency, right, to their partner.
Yep. Yeah, pretty early on. It could just be like, hey, just so you know, I'm like, I do have a bit of anxiety, so you can just let them know. Or you can say, hey, I'm not the best texter. I prefer a phone call. Like, you can start helping someone understand you, but without being necessarily demanding, right? And then also, like, you know, Andrew would say to me early on, which helped my anxiety. He's like, oh, okay, like, no worries. I know. He's like, I'm not so good on phone calls. So I was like, okay, like, phoning him isn't his favorite thing. So we started to understand each other's communication style. And I think at one point I even sat him down and said, I'm like really liking getting to know you. And so we want to do this when we're not feeling triggered or anxious. We want to have these conversations when we are calm. I was like, I'm really enjoying getting to know you. I said, and this I said pretty early on. I said, but I noticed, like, when we finish a date, we don't talk about setting up the next one. And we had already dated quite a few times at this point. I was like, it would be really helpful for me if I knew we had something like planned, it doesn't have to be the next day. I said, even if it's like a week or 2 weeks out. I organize my day like that. I'm a very organized person. And he's like, okay, well, how about like next Friday then? And I was like, okay, great. And just knowing that I was going to see him next Friday and we had talked about it took away my anxiety, because the open-endedness wasn't great. So I communicated like, hey, I get a little anxious when we have a total open agenda.
And what's the consequence? Right. And what's the consequence of not bringing that, like, your needs, I suppose it would be, to the relationship and having that dialogue?
Being totally unhappy.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely essential.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Like, you know, no, your partner can't read your mind ever. right?
So
They never can read your mind. So you have to absolutely learn how to advocate for what you need and what you want. And you have to be very crystal clear on what it is you need from a relationship to make you satisfied.
So, Kimberly, all of these tips and tricks and observations are super helpful, especially because I'm not a relationship coach, but I'm really intrigued. In terms of the packages that you have available to people, can you describe for our audience what those are? Because I imagine there are people listening that might want to get in touch with you.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, a great place to go. I'm kind of revamping all of my website and marketing over the next couple of weeks, but a great place to go to just kind of read a little bit about me and read some testimonials would be my website. So it's just KimberlyNinaHill.com. But in terms of what I have for people that are like, okay, I've got some challenges. I want to make the dating experience feel good. And ultimately what I am helping men with, just to be super crystal clear, I support men to attract their dream relationships. That's what I'm helping them do. With single guys, I'm walking them through a process that I've worked for many of my clients, hundreds of my clients, to help them start attracting the kind of relationship they want. So that's ultimately what I'm doing. The way I do that is through one-on-one coaching. So I love really digging deep with one individual. And so I start off either with a 3-month program or a 6-month program.
Okay.
Ultimately, we're covering the same things in each program. It's just sometimes there are some of us that need longer time or more support. I don't promise that men find their dream partner in 90 days. This isn't the 90-day fiance show. But what I do is I teach them the framework to find the dream relationship. Right? So for many of my clients, that happens within the 3 months, and for a lot of them happens a few months after. I had just finished working with, a few months ago, with a 52-year-old client in the States. He'd 25-year divorce, was dating again, kind of going like, how do you do this? Had some anxious tendencies. Wasn't really working it out on the online thing. He wasn't attracting the right kind of women, and he just wasn't meeting the right types of people. So it was frustrating and it wasn't working for him. We worked together for 3 months. He's now reconnected with his crush from 20 years ago.
Aww.
They're now in a relationship, and he said, I quote, "She makes me feel like my best self."
Aww.
I got goosebumps.
I know.
Yeah.
I guess we both love love.
Yeah.
We all love love, the idea of love too. So like that's what's happening. I'm helping guys go through this process I have. And it's broken into kind of 5 categories, to be fair. It's a 5-step process. Steps sometimes sounds a little funny, but we're leading them through 5 really important areas so that they have the framework and the tools to know how to attract the right kind of relationship. The problem that guys have is they're not necessarily attracting the right types of people.
Right.
Right.
And are you allowed? Can you share the approximate costs associated with, for example, the 3 versus the 6-month program?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, usually what I start with doing is I have a 45-minute complimentary consultation because coaching is definitely an investment, and there are many coaches out there. So the first thing is, what is it that you're dealing with, and am I the right fit for you before we talk about investment and payment plans and things like that. But to get an idea of what coaching costs, you are looking at a few thousand to do coaching, and it's because it really demands a lot from the individual, but I also have a framework that's proven now. So
Awesome.
So I mean, anyone that's curious, the first step is to book that call with me, because we are going to go into detail as to what you're going through, what you really do want to see happening for yourself. And then we talk about, what I have to offer, how that fits or doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, I may recommend you elsewhere. If it does fit, then we onboard you and get started. And that's how that process goes. So without a doubt, we have to have a conversation first. Yeah.
When you say framework that's proven, is that like a certain percentage of men that you've worked with that has found love or found their dream relationship?
Yeah. So of course, some men I work in relationships, they're already in them. But for the single men I've worked with, almost every single one of them has, at least at this point now, found somebody that they're in a relationship with. Now the timeline is different. Like I had another client who's out of Nashville, up and coming music star. And we worked together for 3 months. And it was about 3 months after he met his dream relationship. They've bought a piece of land, they're building a home, and now they're engaged.
Wow.
So it's a really high success rate for those that really do the work and apply the framework. Learning something is one thing. Reading a book is one thing. Listening to a podcast is one thing. But applying what you're learning is what gets you the results. So as long as the men are applying what I'm teaching them, they're finding those relationships in different time frames.
Oh, so sweet
Yeah.
to hear. I want to ask so many more questions, but we're I know you're busy and we're at the top of the hour. So we always round out with 5 rapid fire questions. So do you have a couple more minutes for us to ask you
Sounds fun.
this? Okay.
Cool.
True or false, is love blind?
False.
Does giving a guy an ultimatum work?
No.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Caring, funny, wild.
I love the last one. What is a good first date idea?
Going for a walk and a coffee, or doing something where you're actually interacting together. So like either a board game or pitch and pod or something where you can share an experience and have fun.
Yeah.
Okay, fun. What's your most favorite romantic movie?
Oh, well, 2 of them. Of course, everyone loves The Notebook. That popped into my head right
knew
away.
you were gonna say
but,
that.
But the Romeo and Juliet, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, obviously it's a tragedy, guys, but it's one of my favorite films of all time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And sorry, actually, final question. We lied about that. Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah.
And you also you have the Self-Confidence podcast as well. So where should our listeners find you? What's their best chance of doing that?
Yeah, so firstly, you can head over to Instagram. I'm posting daily videos and daily content there. I've grown a bit of a following on Instagram, and that's just my handle is at Kimberly Nina Hill. So if you want to get a sense of my personality, the stuff I talk about, how I show up, obviously on camera, go check out my social media. Of course, yeah, I do have a podcast. I release episodes weekly. I've been doing it for about 2-something years now. It's called the Self-Confidence Project Podcast. That's available on iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, and I think it goes out to a few other places. I even saw it on Audible once, which is strange. But anyways, it's out there so you guys can have a listen. Either I'm doing kind of short solo 20-minute episodes or I'm bringing on expert guests, everything from the world's highest paid porn star to sex therapists, to other coaches, to people that talk about confidence and mental health, to men's coach leaders like Dan Doty, who founded Everyman, to Jason Gaddis, who wrote a book on getting to zero on conflict reduction. So there's some really amazing content that people can learn from there. So it's a great place to go. And of course, you can send me a message or DM on Instagram too, and I'll do my best to get back to you. So.
And Kimberly, I'm obsessed with your daily Instagram post and your podcast, but I also want to mention giving props to Andrew, your partner, who approached you and gave you, his number and was like a very gentle, give me a call if you...
Well, he did it on Tinder, okay? So let's make sure the story is
okay.
We met on Tinder, and he made me laugh because, and I'm sure other guys have this too, but his bio and I remember it because it literally made me laugh and create an impression. I hate when guys flex their height. It makes me sick to my stomach. 6'2". It makes me sick to my stomach. And I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. Like, he has some banter, which I love. Humor, right? That makes us compatible. And then I looked through his photos, and to be honest, I was like, not the best photos. Like all girls do. Not gonna let that, like, people are different in person, right? So like we swiped, we had some banter, and then he was very gentlemanly. He's like, I don't really get that excited by many girls here, but something about you has me like super stoked to meet you. I don't know if it's too soon, but could I get your number?
Cute.
And I was like, of course you can.
Okay, here's
so sweet.
here's a real question. Is he 6'1"? Or is he
No, he's
actually
6'2".
6'2"? Okay.
Which
He
is so
passed.
sweet. And
He
I mean, I
passed.
know guys are like, well, a lot of guys are shorter too, and that is great. Height is not an issue for me. I've dated guys that are my height and slightly even under that, and it's who you are and your personality. Now, some people will have that as a deal breaker, and that's their choice, whatever. It's great that Andrew's tall. I can wear heels, and it's a nice feeling, but there's so many other qualities about him that I like more.
Amazing.
That's awesome. Kimberly, amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing some of this advice. I was really looking forward to this, and I learned so much. So your Instagram handle, Kimberly Nina Hill, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you very soon.
Thank you.